Welcome everyone. This is Mary Vanden Plas, Director of Research and Operations here at Birchworks. We are an executive recruiting firm that specializes in quantitative business roles, including data science and analytics. And today, two of our recruiters will be sharing their insights on a variety of job search topics. A few quick logistics items before we dive in. Only the presenters will be speaking, so your microphones are muted. We'll have a short Q&A at the end, and you could submit your questions throughout the talk using the chat function on the left side of your screen. If you experience technical issues, submit those through the chat box as well. Finally, today's session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel shortly. So if you missed part of it or would like to share it with a colleague, you're welcome to do so. Now to introduce our speakers for today. Both Flora and Stefan specialize in working with clients and candidates to fill data science and analytics roles. Flora Zhang is well versed in the analytics space, having been a quantitative market researcher at Nielsen for several years. She also spent 3 years doing competitive analysis, tracking studies, and qualitative interviews as a marketing consultant for a digital ad agency. Stefan Valentine spent several years recruiting actuaries and predictive modelers in the insurance industry, and now partners with Flora Zhang on the quantitative analytics team at Birchworks. Over the past several years, Birchworks has been repeatedly mentioned in the press, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Forbes, Information Week, the Chicago Tribune, and more. Last year, we were also honored to be on the Forbes list of America's best recruiting firms. And now to get started, Flora and Stefan, I'll hand the reins over to you.
Thanks, Mary. Hi everyone, and happy Valentine's Day to you. It's such a privilege for me today to be running this webinar with none other than Mr. Stefan Valentine himself. So, he's obviously the star of the show today, but let me go ahead and just get us kicked off. We have a lot to cover off on. So today, we're going to be looking through a couple things. What do companies look for? Career planning at various stages throughout your career. Interview preparation, questions you may be asked during these interviews, mistakes to avoid, various trends on salaries and general market space, as well as how you can generally keep up and keep yourself up to date in this ever-changing market. So a variety of roles and positions fall within the realm of analytics, including but not limited to the ones shown on this screen. Chances are if you're in this webinar, you might fall under one of these categories. So to start out, what is it that companies really look for? How do you make yourself the #1 candidate in their pool of applicants? And before we get into the technical skills, here are some of the softer ones that we hear the most about from companies. So solving interesting data problems is one thing, but knowing what problems have real business value is another thing entirely. Business acumen is the ability to prioritize the needs and best interests of the business, which is something companies value very highly. So the most successful and desirable analytics professionals are data geeks, but companies also want to see somebody who is interested in solving the difficult problems and approaching data in innovative ways. In an interview, you may even be asked to describe a project that you independently tackled outside of work. You will also need to be able to communicate insights in order for them to have any value. You can solve the most difficult business problem a business has ever faced, but before your solution adds any value, you need to be able to explain it properly. Oftentimes, you'll face extra scrutiny even in this department while pursuing analytical roles. So don't just be another numbers person who can't use words. Employers are always trying their hardest to avoid just that. So just to further a point about the softer skills and more of that business acumen, the top complaints we often hear from hiring managers are actually analytics professionals who are pursuing problems that might be interesting to them but aren't useful to the business, or professionals who are unable to take what they've learned from the data and translate it into a plan for the business and be actionable. And what is the point of analysis really if you can't form a coherent strategy afterward? So to ensure actionability, make sure you know a few things. The technical depth of your audience and their general capabilities, know your audience's priorities, and provide relevant examples to them. As always, keep the bigger picture in mind and make sure your recommendation aligns.
So now we want to move into talking about what you can kind of do at different points in your career to make sure that you're on the right track in keeping yourself available and ready for the industry as it moves and as you move into different parts of your career. So we'll start off by talking about what you can do in the early stages of your career to make sure that you're on track. Before we dive into kind of internships, I wanted to note a few general rules of thumb. You want to make sure that you keep your LinkedIn up to date so that when you are connecting with people and networking with professionals, they have the full picture in mind of your background and experience. You also want to make sure to keep your resume current so that whenever you have a chance to display your background to anyone, you can make sure that you have this wonderful tool to show everyone your professional experience. And then make sure to keep your social media presence either professional, or if it's less than professional, you want to make sure it's private so that when people are searching you on the internet, they don't find any reason not to consider you for an opportunity. So one of the most useful things that you can do for the early stages of your career is to find an internship that will allow you to be hands-on with the company's data and work on a real-world project. This will allow you to gain experience beyond restricted academic data sets, show employers you can work with real-world data, and also give you an opportunity to display the business acumen that you've developed. Oftentimes your internship can also lead to a full-time offer with the company that you've gotten the internship with, so it's definitely a useful tool in your early career. It's also important that you find an opportunity with a broad enough scope of work that you're able to utilize all of the skills and experience that you've gained in your education and internships so that you can stay hands-on with the data and continue to build upon your skill sets so you'll be marketable in the future. Finally, having a broad technical skill set will allow you to open up the number of opportunities that you're qualified for. So having experience in multiple statistical tools gives you a leg up over the other applicants that are only proficient in one, for example. And when we look at the results of the survey that we have done over the past 5 years about what tool that predictive analytics professionals prefer to use in their work, you can see that things have changed quite a bit in terms of the tools that they prefer to use. In 2014 and 2015, we examined SAS versus R preferences, and we added Python in 2016 due to popular demand. Since then, it's climbed from 22% or 20% to 33% of the votes. This is a trend that we've noticed in nearly every segment that we've analyzed this year. Support for Python is increasing, but as all three remain popular, having the ability to work in multiple of these tools is definitely helpful. So as we move to the mid part of your career, you want to make sure that you remain hands-on with the data and can continue to do the technical work required of many predictive analytics professionals. You don't want to lose the technical chops that you've built upon so far in the early part of your career. And if you want to consider changing industries as you move into the midpoint of your career, it's important to do so before you get too deep into it, as it becomes harder to switch the deeper you get into one specific industry. We always advise people not to get too caught up on titles. But if you are looking to manage people or projects, for example, it may be important to seek out a title that matches the responsibilities that you want to assume, or a title relating to the type of work that you wish to be doing. There are some career planning mistakes that you might want to avoid, especially as you're getting closer into the midpoint of your career. Staying in one job too long might silo you if you're eventually looking to branch out, but job hopping also reflects poorly and raises a red flag to employers on your dedication and longevity. Don't be too overly title focused, as we said, as titles are rarely apples to apples across various companies and industries. And there are some points on here too that we would like to make that are kind of self-explanatory that help to talk about career planning mistakes you should avoid.
All right, so you have been planning and managed to land that interview, no matter what stage of the job search you're on. But now what? So how are you going to best prepare for these interviews? So companies love candidates who love them. Show your interest in the firm by doing your due diligence. Research them in the news. What kinds of headlines have they been making? What are their long-term strategies and goals? And so on and so forth. Look up the specific interviewers and people you would be speaking to on LinkedIn. What are their backgrounds? Can you find any similarities? Can you relate to them? Are they published or especially passionate about one particular area of work? Ask questions that demonstrate you've been paying attention to their personal stories. And then obviously, make sure you know the job description and requirements inside and out that you're interviewing for. What tools will you be using? What's your day-to-day? And then to fill in the gaps, use your interview time to get any unanswered questions about the role answered. Just to emphasize again, it's very important to be aware of industry news. Being unprepared can make a horrible impression, especially if some major event has happened in that company's industry or their own press, and make you seem kind of silly and uninformed. Now, the majority of initial round interviews take place by phone, so it's important to be prepared for these. Generally speaking, here are a couple tips just to remember. Make sure you're always in a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. I know it's hard during the workday to find a perfectly quiet area, but definitely do not go to a crowded coffee shop or an office or lobby, anything like that. Have a copy of your resume handy, as more often than not employers will ask for a run-through of your background. Prepare at least 3 specific job or company related questions. Practice running through a summary of your background and experience in about 3 to 4 minutes, really no more than that. Don't just read your resume out loud. Practice explaining your quantitative projects, and know that you may be explaining technical projects to a human resources professional or an internal recruiter who may not be looking for as much technical depth as your direct manager. Ideally, have your computer available in case you need to reference any analysis projects you've done or look up anything else during the interview. And then from your scheduled start time, give your interviewer about 5 to 10 minutes to give you a call in case they're coming from back-to-back meetings and might be running a bit late. Speak clearly and make sure not to speak too quickly. Lastly, don't speak negatively about previous employers, or if you must, make sure to follow a negative statement with a positive one. For example, I didn't enjoy the job as much, but I learned a lot about my strengths and preferences, and I gained extremely valuable knowledge and experience. Everyone has their reasons for looking, but you need to make sure to spin it in a positive light. And then more and more these days, we're actually seeing companies do kind of a second or third round Skype or video interview before bringing candidates on site. Here are some general tips, but the same general themes as a phone apply. For those interested, we also have a blog entry on our website dedicated specifically to video interview etiquette. Lastly, companies are generally bringing qualified candidates for at least 1, maybe 2 in-person and on-site interviews. What to bring? So several copies of your resume, as you'll likely be meeting with multiple members of the team, preferably in a nice folder with a pen and paper for taking notes. Make sure, if possible, you have any relevant samples of your work that you can quickly speak to, example data set, something that helps to just bring color to what you've been talking about. Wear something nice always, though to what extent it's always helpful to ask. But when in doubt, go business formal for sure. Certain companies, especially those like startups though, almost always tend to be more relaxed, and I would recommend business casual, but again, does not ever hurt to ask. And then as mentioned before, make sure you've done all of your research prior to going in. So for the interview itself, when you're there face-to-face in the office, prepare at least 3 specific job or company related questions. This is really your main opportunity to learn about a day in the life, the office environment, who are the personalities you'll work with, the team structure. Really make sure you're making good use of this opportunity, as sometimes these are selling you as much as you're selling yourself. Be prepared for slightly more technical questions here, as in-person employers are actually able to walk through your data and see your process of thinking in person. Lastly, do not speak negatively again about previous employers. Always spin things in a positive light and come off as optimistic and bringing that good attitude. And then send thank you notes. This is something that is not always top of mind and can be missed when you're there a little bit nervous, but definitely collect business cards and at least email addresses from each of your interviewers and send personalized different thank you notes to each person.
So now let's talk about some of the questions that you might be expected to answer when you are interviewing with a company. We'll start with a couple of behavioral and character kind of questions. Employers will likely ask you these kind of questions to find out what kind of worker you will be in their organization. You can expect questions about how hard of a worker you are and how exactly you go about your work. How do you stay organized, for example? How do you plan out your daily schedule? How can you prioritize your workload, etc. They will also ask questions about cultural fit, not only in terms of how you work on a team, but in terms of the kind of atmosphere the company is trying to maintain. In general, though, almost every answer you give to every question will contribute to an interviewer's perception of your cultural fit with the company. Lastly, you will want to display that you have the ability to solve complex problems to show that you can contribute valuable insight to the company. Some examples of questions you might expect to receive in these kind of interviews. You may be asked to give an example of how you handle a challenge, and you always want to explain how you overcame that challenge, of course. They'll ask you, have you ever made a mistake, and how did you handle it? And the answer to that should always be that you handled it well, of course. How do you set goals and achieve them? And then maybe as well, do you prefer working individually or as a part of a team, and why you have that preference? Sometimes referred to as technical questions, questions that involve the industry the company that you're applying for is in, and questions about your current and past positions will help interviewers evaluate your appropriateness for the position you're going for. These questions will involve your past work experience and responsibilities in each position, the tools and software that you've used to perform those responsibilities, and again, your abilities to solve complex problems. Be prepared to speak about a past project, like a model that you built, for example, and the tools that you use to go about working on that. Some examples that you could expect for these type of questions would be something like, tell me 3 negative things and 3 positive things about your favorite statistical software. Compare how you would use R and Python differently for data analysis. How you would turn unstructured data into structured data. What are the general drawbacks of a general linear model, and what tools have you used for visualization?
So while obviously the interviewer is going to be asking the bulk of the questions, there are specific ones that you should keep in mind to be prepared to ask your interviewer. We've really stressed the importance of doing this because during the interview, this is really your main opportunity to understand the scope of work from somebody actually in it doing the work or close to it. So ask about the structure and the role. What does the team look like? Who does the role report to? Does anyone report to you? Ask about the position and your day-to-day tasks. You know, what types of tools and methodologies you'll be using, the types of data and data sources, what state is the data in, is it structured or unstructured, what is the breakdown of your day, when can you be expected to be in the office, what's your time allocation, the time spent on analysis versus cleaning versus project management, and so on and so forth. And now, without further ado, we'll have Mr. Valentine talk about salary trends.
So we release a salary survey every year, and we come to a bunch of insights about how it kind of looks across the market, what predictive analytics professionals and data science are making at various career levels and different geographies, and just kind of gives an overview of the market in terms of salary. First, this slide is showing individual contributors in predictive analytics. And these are professionals who primarily work with what we call structured data. We also have salaries for data scientists, which for the purpose of these salaries refers to professionals working primarily with unstructured or streaming data. The lines between these two groups have continued to blur over the past few years, and salary ranges can also vary based on several other factors. They can vary, for example, by industry. Here you can see the example for our level 3 individual contributors, which would have 9 or so more years of experience in predictive analytics. And these are just some of the industries that we track. And I do want to note that different companies have different salary structures. So as much as we can produce these kind of salaries, it can also vary from company to company. Some also may rely more on bonus than base salary, for example. There are a variety of industries that hire predictive analytics professionals. And as we've seen in the past, financial services and marketing and advertising firms continue to employ a very large number of these professionals. But we are noticing that other industries are increasing their hiring of these professionals as well, which we can touch on later too. And technology, however, still continues to be the largest employers of data scientists at over 40%. But we see that use cases for data science are expanding and new industries are hopping on the bandwagon as well. So the market in this industry is continuing to grow. If we shared all the data from this report, we'd be here all day and you wouldn't be able to enjoy your wonderful Valentine's Day, but you can download our full reports for free if you want to poke through the rest of the numbers yourself on our website. So now we just want to quickly go through some major trends and implications of these trends that we're picking up on in the industry and what it means for you as a candidate and for the employers as well. We're seeing an increase in supply at the early career level of analytics and data science professionals. We first pointed this out a few years ago, but recently the difference has become much more noticeable. We've seen the educational backgrounds of predictive analytics professionals increasingly diversify. This means that now there are more paths into the analytics field, such as new advanced degree programs, or experienced candidates adding skills with boot camps, or more candidates making a transition from other fields. Michael Rappa at NC State recently noted in his latest study that there are 140-ish new programs out there for analytics, so a lot more programs are popping up. The implication here for predictive analytics professionals is that with more educational programs and other avenues to learn new skills and tools, it's crucial to keep your skill set diversified and up to date. The implication for employers is that you need to be ready to train early career folks up on the business side of the workplace, since they are newer to the business acumen side of things early on. And despite the intense competition for talent, there has not been a significant increase in salary bands at any job level. However, we have noticed in our conversations with clients looking to hire that an increase in different kinds of perks are popping up. These are perks like flexible work schedules, allowing the employees to work from home, providing a daily lunch, or maybe having a fully stocked kitchen for their employees to enjoy. We've also seen offerings of different health and fitness benefits, and so it'll be interesting to see if this kind of increase in perks kind of continues and if salaries will remain steady. But for professionals, it's important to keep in mind that salary is an important consideration, but it's also crucial to look for growth and learning opportunities. Also make sure to pay attention to some of these perks because they can make a difference in if the total compensation package is worth taking the job. Employers, it's important to think about the benefits that you haven't traditionally offered in the past, but might make sense to offer in this newly competitive market. Our sense is that something has to give with all of this upward pressure for higher salaries, so be ready. Another trend that we are noticing is obstructing both employers and many analytics professionals, and it's the current tangle around visa support in the US. Many visa candidates are seeing an increased wait time from premium processing holds and additional requests for evidence. We've also seen transfer declines when in the past these transfers were way more seamless. These issues are very troubling for both sides of the hiring table.
So, Stefan and I just showered you with quite a bit of information on all of the happenings in the analytics marketplace, a lot of ways to prepare yourself and handle interviews. I know it's a lot, so generally speaking, how can you keep up? We mentioned keeping up with trends earlier. Specifically, do a couple of things. Network, network, network. Join associations or professional organizations. Joining and attending luncheons, conferences, or networking events for your local chapter of the American Statistical Association or Informs can introduce you to other professionals in your field and offer both membership benefits like career resources. Join analytics and data science LinkedIn groups. LinkedIn groups can be a really good way to connect with people who aren't local and to stay informed of trending topics and new developments in analytics, data science, machine learning, market mix modeling, digital marketing, just to name a few. Join your alumni association. Look to see if your school has any relevant alumni associations, as these can be a really good way to find new opportunities and hear about what's happening. Attend meetups. Aside from more formal organizations like the ASA and it Informs, many areas also have vibrant meetups communities where analytics and data science professionals can gather and share ideas, discuss topics, or view presentations. You can browse our meetups. We actually have a list on our website as well. Then attend conferences. Keep an eye on conferences and meetings to see if there are any upcoming that might be feasible for you to attend. Katie Nuggets keeps a running list of upcoming conferences that can also be found on our website. Pursue some online courses and certifications to keep up your knowledge. With the current boom in analytics and data science, there are many options for learning and adding to your toolkit and skill set. Have you only worked in R? Consider taking a course on SAS or Python. You want to learn more about machine learning? Browse the various offerings on Coursera, Udacity, or Udemy. Some universities even offer online certificates as well. Analytics and data science tools will continue to evolve, so stay aware of new developments in your area. If you only learn how to use one tool and then that tool becomes obsolete, you may have trouble adapting your skills. Ways to keep yourself sharp include Kaggle competitions, and if you haven't already tried out Kaggle, the website does offer analytics and data science professionals the opportunity to compete in company-sponsored competitions, and it also provides the ability to download data sets to practice and refine your skills. This is a great way to get access to messy data and complex problems, both of which are key to keeping your skills sharp. seek out analytics literature. There are books, blogs, magazines, etc. that are tailored specifically to analytics and data science professionals. Lots of great resources out there, and the more informed you are about the latest tools, skills, and trends, the better prepared you'll be for changes in the market. And then again, in addition to keeping an eye on analytics or data science trends, it's also wise to keep a general awareness of the political and financial news climate, especially if this affects the industry you're working in, such as finance. Consider subscriptions to relevant sources like newsletters, The Economist, healthcare journals, because these can really help you get a wider business context. Shameless plug, contact recruiters to stay aware of job market trends. And we're not just saying that because we're the recruiters, but talking to us, talking to recruiters in general, can give you an overall sense for the job market or hiring trends that top-line job statistics might not necessarily capture. Recruiters can also give you a sense for what data science and analytics tools and skills are most in demand, since they work with a variety of clients. I can speak to this myself, having been here for just about 4 years. The tools and those trends there have changed tremendously. And then check out Burtch Works, of course. We have so many different resources for you. We put together salary studies, as Stefan mentioned. We post career advice. We write articles on industry trends and research on the blog, upload salary and career webinars to our YouTube channel. So if you're really looking to stay up to date on all of these things, following us on LinkedIn or Twitter is probably one of the easiest ways. Now, just to dive a little bit deeper into networking. It can be a kind of daunting idea to many of us, but there are ways to prepare. Keep your LinkedIn profile and resume updated. This should really almost go without saying. Even if you're not currently looking, you always want your profile to be professional and represent you in the best light. Likewise, even if you're not job searching, you should keep your resume up to date, and it will save you a lot of time later on when you are searching. It's easier to articulate your impact on a project when it's fresh in your mind, and if you wait too long, you might find it difficult to summarize your data projects in resume format. And when you finally do decide to start looking, it will expedite the process, since your resume will probably just need a few tweaks rather than a complete overhaul. You can also find some more of our analytics resume tips on our website. Practice talking points about your background and your interests. Again, it can be nerve-wracking for many, and even if that's not the case for you, practice can always help you stay focused on the points that you want to get across. Obviously, you don't want to sound like a robot with a script, but even simply reading through your resume a few times and thinking of questions that you like to ask other people can be beneficial. Always keep some business cards on you. If you run into the director of analytics for your dream company in the elevator, at a conference, at the mall, you want them to have a way to look you up on LinkedIn later. And if you don't already have business cards, Vistaprint has a wide range of options, for example. So, we've covered off on a lot. Some key takeaways, I know. It's hard to summarize all in one slide, but just to recap, make sure you're understanding what companies want. Build up your resume and your profile. Make sure you have the in-demand skills, the tools. Make sure you buffer up your experiences with internships and projects that you can speak to. Develop a deliberate job search strategy. Prepare for those interviews, do your research, know who you're speaking with, the job itself. And then avoid common mistakes that we told you about. And of course, on an ongoing basis, don't let your skills go stale. Make sure you take efforts to polish yourself on an ongoing basis. So I think that's it from us. It's back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Flora and Stefan. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Burtch Works, we are an executive recruiting firm specializing in quantitative fields like analytics, data science, and marketing research. We're the leading resource for insights about the hiring market and produce comprehensive salary reports every year for our main specialty areas. These reports each contain 30+ pages of data and can be downloaded for free at birchworks.com/study. We typically work with professionals starting 2 to 3 years into their career up through senior executive positions, and we also offer a variety of other resources. If you're looking to browse for new opportunities, you can check out our targeted job board, which is trafficked by thousands of quantitative professionals in a variety of fields. For more hiring market insights, check out birchworks.com/blog, where you can find flash surveys on SAS, R, and Python, and what motivates analytics professionals to change jobs, as well as advice on resumes, interviews, evaluating job offers, and much more. You can also follow Birchworks across our social media channels to stay up to date on our latest research. On our YouTube channel, found at youtube.com/Birchworks, you can find recordings of our other presentations, including SAS, R, Python data analysis from an actual data scientist, and predictions for the data science and analytics market, as well as our series with executive leadership coach Tim Ressmeyer, with topics including the impact of confidence on career success, making career goals, improving collaboration skills, and making successful career transitions. And now is the time everyone's been looking forward to, the Q&A. So let's jump in, and feel free to continue sending your questions in using the chat box on your screen. We've definitely gotten a bunch of great questions already. So to start us off, Flora and Stefan, how early should I start looking for a job?
Yeah, so definitely a great question, and I think the answer is going to differ depending on the stage of your career search that you're in and your career in general. So I like to split it into two parts. So one for current students or recent graduates, as well as secondly people who are already working and maybe just looking for their next job. So for students, I definitely recommend taking advantage of any on-campus recruiting initiatives and kind of using that cyclical nature that many universities and schools offer for employers to come in. This might start honestly with your internship search, and this might also start up to maybe even 6 to 8 months before graduation. For folks who are looking to maybe leave their current position and start a new one, it's going to be a shorter timeline. You know, typically companies are looking to hire relatively soon. So you think about a typical interview timeline, anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks for the interview process, and then giving 2 weeks notice or so. So from 1 to 2 months in total in advance of when you want to start is probably the best time to start looking. Same for recruiters too, just to give you some background on us. Most of our clients are, we always joke, looking to hire somebody yesterday. So again, unless you're ready to start within the next month, month and a half to 2 months, it probably doesn't make sense to work with us or apply through us right away if you're still seeking something further out.
Thank you so much for that, Flora. Next question is about following up after an interview. What do you think about handwritten thank you notes? Would you encourage them, or do you think emailed thank you notes are preferred? Well,
it's probably better to email because you want to follow up pretty recently after the interview, and it just seems more into kind of today's day and age that sending an email is kind of expected, and just kind of makes more sense in terms of what people are expecting of you as you send a thank you note. As we mentioned, you want to gather the business cards of everyone that you speak to, and you want to send a personalized note to each person, and you want to reference something that you spoke about in the interview, so they know that you were paying attention, that you were engaged, that you were really honed in on what they were talking about. You don't want to send canned kind of thank you notes to each person, or a general thank you note that is exactly the same to each person. So we'll definitely say emails are the way to go, and you can definitely personalize the emails to make them know that you were very engaged in the interview process.
And just to piggyback on that too, things are moving so quickly these days, and the expectation really is that those thank you notes are going to come later that evening, or at most 1 to 2 days later. So even though it might be more thoughtful, companies don't have time anymore to get the handwritten. So definitely email.
All right, that's great, guys. Thanks. And next question is about job titles, and how much focus should there be on the difference between titles. For example, a senior data analyst position versus a data scientist position if the job description is similar.
Yeah, this is certainly something that we've come across. It comes to light with when offers come out. They put senior data analyst on my job title on my offer letter, but could I change that to data scientist or manager of analytics or what have you? So I always say, take titles with a bit of a grain of salt because they vary so vastly across different companies, different industries. I know folks who have data analyst positions who are making more, doing more high-level work than data scientists and managers. It's really important to focus more on your scope of work, your roles and responsibilities. Sometimes, and this has actually been something I've seen too, sometimes if you care that much or you want to post it on your LinkedIn, people don't actually care too much. It depends on the company again, but maybe officially for just kind of company policy purposes, officially you're a data analyst. If you want to put data scientist on your LinkedIn, that might be perfectly fine. I think all of that is just to say, it's not the most important piece of this puzzle. There's always room to kind of wiggle around it or discuss, but yeah, always be flexible there rather than not.
All right, thank you. Next question is about, since it's very rare to tick all of the boxes on a job listing, how do you address the parts of the job description that maybe you're less proficient in?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it kind of aligns with a question you might expect to be asked in an interview, which might be, what are your biggest weaknesses? And when a hiring manager is looking at your resume and they decide to speak with you, they're aware of the parts of the job description that you might not be proficient in or that you may not have you don't check that box of the requirement. So what they're really looking for is that you're able to explain how you can overcome the kind of deficiency that you might have in a certain area. So for example, if your skills in R maybe aren't as strong as the job description might suggest they need to be, you can talk about what you've done with the tool so far, but how you've maybe built up your skills in other tools in the past, and how you might be able to replicate that with R, for example. So you really just need to make sure that you can point to the areas that you don't feel as strong in and say that here's how I could overcome this. Here's how I've done it in the past with other things. Here's how I know that despite the fact that I'm not as strong in this thing as I should be, or that you might feel like you need to be, it's important that I can develop the skills that I need, and I'm definitely able to come past this.
All right, great. Next question is specifically around students and entry-level professionals, and how would you recommend those people with little to no work experience to stand out when they are applying for roles?
I think it's about selling yourself in many different ways. As we mentioned before, in addition to the sort of technical abilities that you likely are picking up amongst your fellow classmates, differentiate yourself by really being able to speak to the business problem well, showcasing your business acumen. Even if you haven't worked in business before, be a strong communicator, show genuine enthusiasm about learning, do those Kaggle competitions so that people know you're, that you do this in your spare time, that it's a genuine passion of yours. You can look for opportunities, whether it's volunteer through your school. A lot of places provide either like consulting clubs or opportunities for you to sort of lend your analytics abilities to other organizations or people who may be looking for help. They always say that the first job is hardest to get because you don't have that job yet. So it really is about kind of seeking out these other opportunities to be able to speak to and differentiate yourself.
And just to kind of hammer that home, being able to provide that kind of context in a concrete way to your technical skills and ability to do the work is really going to give you a leg up other candidates who only kind of have a list of their technical skills and abilities. If you don't prove that you have them and that you can, or you don't prove that you can actually do the work, it's just going to be a list of skills on a piece of paper. So like Flora said, yes, it's very important to be able to demonstrate that you can do the work in very concrete ways.
All right, thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question here, and it's one I absolutely have to give to you guys. What are the benefits of working with a recruiter?
What aren't the benefits of working with a recruiter? No, so recruiters are funny. There are so many of us. We work in many different industries, fields, have different reputations. I will say, had I known about recruiting services earlier on in my career, I would have really jumped on that train earlier. As a candidate especially, I think it's nice to have us as a resource. There are so many resumes floating around these days for a limited number of job openings, and they post them everywhere on Indeed, LinkedIn, their websites, you name it. It's so easy to get lost in that flood of applications. What we can provide to you is genuinely a list of jobs that are a good fit based on your experiences, based on your personality, but also we are able to showcase your resume and send them directly to oftentimes the hiring manager, to the HR people, and that way you're much less likely to get lost in that sea of resumes. As well, we're happy to serve as kind of ongoing mentors or just kind of a resource for you in case we see things on your resume that can be tweaked or give you general coaching advice. Many of our clients are long-term clients, and so say you get an interview with them, we know what questions they'll ask. We know what they're really looking for and can kind of help coach you through that interview process, as well as even when offers come out, serving as that liaison to help negotiate an offer, to get you the best deal, and so on and so forth. So really I think nothing to lose.
Especially because all of these great services are completely free of charge to candidates because our recruiting fees are paid by our client companies. So on the candidate side, we get to help you with all of these services and help you out through your job search, and there's no charge to you. So there's really, as Flora said, nothing to lose at all by working with us.
All right. Thank you so much, Flora and Stefan, and thank you to everybody who joined us for participating and asking all of these great questions. And as you know, if you'd like to see if we have roles that are fit for your experience, please feel free to reach out to us and send your resume to us at info@birchworks.com to start the process. Thank you so much again for joining us, and have a great Valentine's Day.